Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. And today marks round 3 of the 9-round calendar, and more importantly it marks the conclusion of the Euro Cup, where we come the end of this round will be crowning our Cup champions for the Euro Cup, and one of the 3 cups that make up the course of this 9-round season. Our schedule for tonight, of course, is going to be a bit different as well, given the fact that we've only got one race on the agenda, much like the normal, but it is the case that we don't have a preceding qualifying session. Instead, we purely have one race, one session, and that is the feature race, which will be in approximately 13 minutes time at 8:45 British Summer Time, or UTC +1. That, of course, being our time and schedule line there. It is the case, of course, this broadcast is being brought to you as a post-round broadcast. It is the case that this stream is actually live, but the racing itself occurred earlier in the week, and the racing occurred on what was, unless I'm very much mistaken, Wednesday the 21st of September, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live, and as close as possible as if it were live, in the fact that I, as your host and commentator, do not know how our drivers get on over the course of the 40 minutes of racing action. And indeed, if you're one of the drivers who participated on Wednesday and are tuning in right now, we do ask that you avoid giving away any spoilers, of course, to keep it nice and raw for everybody tuning in, and also, of course, for me as your host and commentator. Who am I? My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit to the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And it is the case I'll be providing you all of your coverage over the course of this 9-round season, and what a season it has been so far. And in any round, it will be the case that it will be broadcasted both on what is YouTube and Twitch. On YouTube at TX141TX or Paul Walsh, you can also search for there. Alternatively, if you're more of a Twitch user, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in live on Twitch. And it is the case we have access to both of the chats, and therefore we can see what you guys and girls have to say about the racing action and everything in between. And speaking of which, we can already see a number of you in there, including SOE_Matthew in YouTube, excited for the racing and looking forward to guaranteed action. And we can also see there in the Twitch chat Miss Kitty Louise 90 doing very well and looking forward to tonight, and not doing too bad, thank you Miss Kitty. I must admit, I'm a little bit raw still from doing my own endurance racing earlier today, but I wanted to make sure we delayed by an hour today, of course, and I wanted to do that to make sure that we gave this the due care and attention it deserves, because we have a field of what is just under 30 drivers, 26 to be precise, who really have poured their hearts into this round, and you can imagine that the stakes were very high, particularly at the top of the championships in each of the Pro, Pro-Am and Am classes, and it is the case that our drivers are looking forward to bringing home that potential crown tonight. And we also say hello there to GT_Eddie in the Twitch chat, saying so many races happening this week, even right now, and indeed there's some major live events happening on the official iRacing series. Indeed, I believe it is the case the Tag Heuer Porsche Super Cup is currently ongoing. But if you're staying with us, we're very grateful to that, of course, and well, let's take a look at that calendar as it stands and how far we've come since the beginning. Which is the case then after what was our first 2 rounds. We started off at the Red Bull Ring back on the 7th of September, then we made our way to the Hockenheim Ring, 2 sprint race rounds, and it was the case that in both we saw plenty of battling action up and down the field. A little bit of a rickety start to the season at the Red Bull Ring, it has to be said. With regards to in the midfield, we did see a major incident on the exit of turn number 1, which upset the apple cart for a number of drivers, but whilst we did have a number of drivers who fell by the wayside during the incident, it was the case we still saw brilliant racing action, particularly in the Pro-Am class, where it was the case it was a 2-way fight for second place in the Pro-Am class, and well, on top of that, we did have that very close fight for the win in the Pro class as well. But rolling forward to the Hockenheim Ring, it was the case again, we had a brilliant battle for the lead of the Pro class through and through over the course of the distance of the German circuit in our second sprint race of the season. And in the Pro-Am class and also the Am classes, it was the case we had plenty of battles, but in the Am class there was one constant. It was that Matthew Smith was on dominant form, and we look forward to seeing whether he's able to pull off what is the trio of wins tonight. Today, of course, we are at the Silverstone circuit. The racing having occurred on the 21st of September, and after that we'll be taking a week's break before returning for the commencement of the America's Cup, where the racing goes to the European continent, where we have a bunch of circuits which are very mixed in their nature in terms they have a little bit of everything, and Silverstone is the personification of a circuit that pretty much has everything you can name over the course of its distance, and the America's Cup rounds will see us go to circuits which are a little bit more power orientated by default, albeit it is the case, however, the final round in particular is more of a balanced circuit. Now, Road Atlanta is where we'll kick off, and that'll be on the 5th of October, followed by Circuit Charles Villeneuve, making our way from the United States of America to Canada, and then we'll be heading down to the South American continent for the Interlagos circuit, located in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and wrapping up the America's Cup on the 19th of October. Another week's break will follow, and then we'll be making our way over to Japan, the mainland of Japan, for 3 racing rounds of action, starting at Twin Ring Motegi, followed up by Suzuka, and then Fuji, and these 3 circuits, highly technical in nature, typically, albeit Fuji, you could say, is the exception there, where it's ludicrously long at start finish straight, but even then there's a lot of technicality that leads up to and comes away from that straight, and we'll bring the curtain down on the series come the 16th of November. Of course, prizes up for grabs for our winners of each of the cups, and it is the case we have these 3 cups to celebrate 3 different dynamics of racing, whether it be on the European continent, the Americas continent, alternatively the Japanese mainland. But as we look then up from the season ahead to the standings as they currently stand after 2 rounds, it is the case we can see here in the Drivers' Championship for the Pro class, remembering of course there's only Drivers' Championships, there's no Teams Championship. It is the case that Jason Landry leads going into tonight by only 3 points over Luke Burtonshaw. Now, the name of the story, of course, last time at the Hockenheimring was that Luke Burtonshaw was not quite on the pace compared to Landry, but Tanner Dibble really established a brilliant run of form at the Hockenheimring as well. And whilst he's on 91 points there and 9 points off the championship leader, you can imagine that if Dibble is able to have a brilliant round tonight and Landry and Burtonshaw drop key points, we could see Tanner Dibble being crowned our Euro Cup champion. Jordan Butler there, the best of the rest in P4 on 70 points, a sizable gap of what is 28 points there to John Lansdowne in P5, and then Shane Larson, Ben Rose and Edwin Offray completing the Pro Championship standings. And it is the case, of course, Edwin Offray not able to attend tonight as we're to understand it, and that is due to personal circumstances. I do believe he did pick up COVID-19, which if the case, we do wish him well and hope he does return later on. In fact, I can see him there in the Twitch chat saying, I should be around next time for the first race of the America's Cup, and we're well prepared for the rest of the season, and that's what we love to hear, and we look forward to seeing you, Eddie, back out on circuit. But coming from our Pro class then to the Pro-Am Championship, and here it's a little bit more complex, because you can see at the top of the standings after 2 rounds, James Logsdon leads by 6 points over the trio of Jermaine Warren, Justin Bragan and Spencer Torrance. And what is very interesting here is the fact that James Logsdon won last time out, but it was the case that he was not the dominant form in round number 1 at the Red Bull Ring. That was Jermaine Warren, and in the end we saw Logsdon and Torrance locked up in this absolutely brilliant battle for second place at the Red Bull Ring, and we didn't quite see that rematerialise at the Hockenheimring. Instead it was the case that Logsdon was really able to deliver. Jermaine Warren not quite on the pace compared to his peers and falling back into the clutches, and then Justin Bragan finds himself right in the middle of the mix there, trying to establish himself as a potential contender. Ilya Speaker there in P5 with 67 points, 6 points off of what is that battle for P2, and you can imagine that Speaker will be doing everything they can to close the distance, with Roger Ganesh the best of the rest in P6 there on 55 points. 2 clear of Fernando Takahashi, and we've seen those 2 go toe-to-toe over the course of the first 2 rounds. John Wilding in P8, Milan Harris in P9, Blake Phillips in P10, and Braden Melling completed the Pro-Am class standings there in P11 on 16 points. Now, as we come to the AM class standings here, the dynamic is very different from the other 2 classes in the fact that Matthew Smith really has been the dominant form over the course of the first 2 rounds, picking up the maximum possible points in the class, 72 points to his name, and he's currently got a 9-point advantage over Dan Ocaranza in P2. And Dan Ocaranza, whilst it's not been perfect for Dan Ocaranza, he's probably had the best of the lot of everybody else, and really nobody's been able to hold a torch to Matthew Smith. Now, what this will mean is that Matthew Smith, I should say, that's almost sneezed over my own words. It is the case he'll be starting at the back of the field, because we'll explain shortly how the grid will work, but he'll have to fight his way through and hope that he's able to get a major result still to put the wrapper on that Euro Cup crown in the AM class. Ocaranza, however, will be close by him with Michael Zepp there on 56 points in P3, 6 points ahead of Lee Porter, and then Jesse Jamison Jr. completed the top 5 there with 49 points. Only 1 point off of Lee Porter and 2 points ahead of PG Christensen, who is the best of the rest in P6. Glenn Bratton pretty soon ahead of Joe Nagy. There's a sizable gap of 11 points between the 2 of them, but from Nagy down to Senegal in P10, is the case there's only 2 points separating them, with Adrian Fedorowski between the 2 in P9. Jose Mari completes what is the run to P11 there on 29 points, 5 clear of Stefan Chalafu, and Kevin Lizarazo completes the AM class standings on 19 points in P13. We then look to our track then for tonight, where we settle all the differences in these classes for the Euro Cup, and it is the Silverstone circuit, located near the town of Silverstone in Northamptonshire of England and the United Kingdom. This circuit, of course, is no stranger to motorsporting history in the fact that it's gone through many guises over the years, and it has featured time and time again multi-national series and international series, including but not limited to Formula One and also what is the British GT Championship. You name it, it has raced here in road racing, and here's a case you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com. This circuit, based on a World War II airfield, is a circuit which, with many of the corners named after particular British museum artefacts such as the Wellington Bomber, hence the Wellington Straight, it is the case that this circuit is going to be an absolute test of our drivers' ability and the mix of technical and also the ability to get on the power as soon as possible. This is a high downforce circuit, and what that means is you are encouraged to take as much speed from corner to corner, and we have got a lot of high and medium speed corners. And indeed, the run from the start finish line all the way up through Abbey at turn number 1, into Farm Curve at 2, and then breaking down into Village and the Loop at turns 3 and 4. That is the ultimate transition already from high speed corners down into a heavy braking zone and then a low speed hairpin at turn number 4. Our drivers will then go flat out through Aintree at turn 5, down the Wellington Straight, and then into the braking zone for the medium speed apexes of Brooklands, followed up by Luffield, before they charge through Woodcote, flat out through turn number 8 on the old start finish straight, all the way up to Copse Corner at turn number 9. Survive that, Copse Corner being a very challenging one. Indeed, we have seen in recent motorsported years what happens when two drivers go side by side into Copse Corner and neither one wants to give way. It is the case then they'll make their way all the way through turns 10, 11, 12 and 13. The combination of Maggots into Beckett's, and if they can survive the sweeping S structure that is turns 10 through to 13, they'll come out at Chapel at turn 14, and it's the long straight line run down the Hanger Straight to Stowe Corner at turn 15. Breaking their way through there, you'll see some of the highest apex speeds at Stowe Corner, much like at Copse Corner at turn number 9, and when they emerge from turn number 15, it's the run down through the Vale into turn 16 and 17, the chicane, which completes the lap at turn number 18 with Club Corner, and then they do it all again. Sounds breathless? It is the case. It will take your breath away when we see our drivers make the way on a round, but as we look to our rules then, what's different with this being a feature race round? Well, in terms of setup, there's nothing new. Drivers shall run the iRacing sprint setup for all rounds. This is a fixed setup series, and therefore the only thing our drivers can tweak on the cars is the brake bias, as I'm to understand it. Car fuel loads have been restricted to 51% for all rounds, including all the feature race rounds. And in the feature race itself, we have no qualifying session. So how do we set the grid? Well, we set it as a reverse grid based on the Drivers' Championship standings following the previous round. So it is the case the leader of a given class championship, so in the Pro class, will see Jason Landry start at the back of his respective field, whereas the driver lowest place in attendance will start at the front. And the classes shall start in the order of pros ahead of the pro-ams, and then the AMs will be behind, and there'll be a 5-second gap anticipated between each class to enable all three classes to go racing safely. Drivers who have yet to score championship points shall start at the back of their class, so they can't gain an unfair advantage by not attending until this feature race. Race starts under a manual double-file rolling start, with the formation being held up to the green flag. Each driver has 2 fast repairs available, given the fact the race duration is almost double the sprint duration of 25 minutes. We're racing for 40 minutes today. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points, if they've been naughty, and there is a mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel. And of course, with that pit stop in play, you have to imagine that some drivers will try and do some fuel saving to eke out that initial stint, but keep in mind there is no need to change tyres, and we're not expecting anyone to change tyres despite the high degradation rates at the Silverstone circuit, given the fact the tyres normally last a whole 60 minutes before needing to be changed. But that's enough rules, regulations and everything else in between. You don't want to know all that. What you want to know about is the racing, and I will join you in that regard as we now make our way back to the circuit here. And well, as we look down, it is the case we can see a number of our drivers in the pit lane, including Pro Championship leader Jason Landry, currently parked up the privateer. But we also do have some new drivers in attendance today, and let's welcome them on in, including John Kroom there from Rockefeller Racing. Keep your eyes out for him in the 145 Mercedes. He'll be making his way around in the Prime car. And we also do have there Alex Carver-Robbins making his way right now down the back straight, all the way down the Hanger Straight up towards where it's turn number 15 there for the QZ Motorsports outfit in the 173 machine. He's in the Prime class as well, and you can see they're running the traditional throwback colours, interestingly enough, making it back to a time where it was the case it was Mercedes, McLaren, particularly the 2006-2007 era of the team. Of course, when Lewis Hamilton took his inaugural F1 championship in 2007, unless I'm very much mistaken, and the very controversial year of 2006 between Alonso and Hamilton, which saw Kimi Raikkonen take the championship at the season finale in perhaps the most interesting circumstances. But indeed, Hamilton's own crowning being interesting with the "is that Glock" moment on the final corner of the final lap of the season. But Alex Carver-Robbins, we're hoping for less drama today in his own Mercedes, running that McLaren Vodafone livery as he makes his way on down. But they're two of the newcomers, and as they make their way on for it, is the case very shortly we will be transitioning over to the formation of the grid. So as the grid is about to be formed, then we can't walk you through it, unfortunately, due to limitations of an iRacing replay file, but we can look down the grid and see where our drivers are all lining up together and give you an indication of where they will all line up on that grid, as we are just waiting for a couple of our drivers to peacefully make their way onto the grid. And here they start to form that grid, and as we look to the blimp camera, we can see there Jason Lanchi will be starting further back with only 6 pros in attendance. We do have a limited pro field, to be fair, compared to Prime and Am. It's the case that that's how the drivers lined up in terms of their iRatings and also what was their pre-season test pace. But you can see Landry and Burtonshaw there on the last row for our pros. And remember, the top 6 drivers who are pros will all peel away into the distance. There'll be a 5-second gap before it will be the case that Fernando Takahashi starts on pole for our Pro-Am drivers. The Brazilian driver will take our drivers away from behind there in the Pro-Am class for a 5-second gap. And as we look all the way back to our AMs, I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, it will be Jose Mari or Stefan Chalafu who will be, in fact, it will be Stefan Chalafu who will be taking our AM drivers away there in the 219 car. But the gridding process is complete, and we do have a couple of drivers who are not going to be starting this race on the grid, and that is Roger Ganesh, Matthew Smith, those two in particular. Michael Zepp's having some connectivity issues, but both Matthew Smith, the championship leader in the AM class, and Roger Ganesh not making it to the grid here in the last bit of late drama, and that could be a surprise. And in fact, Jason Landry corrected me there. My years were out by one. 2007 was Kimi Raikkonen, 2008 was Lewis Hamilton's year. My apologies, here's the case, 1 year out there, give or take. But as John Lauzon makes his way all the way down towards the last couple of corners here, will very shortly be going to the green, and it will be the combination of Ben Rose and John Lauzon who get us underway for 40 minutes of racing action. And as they make their way across the line, it's go, go, go for round number 3 of the GT3 Championship, hosted by Middle of the Pack Racing League, as Ben Rose gets a good start, but John Lauzon tries to hang it around the outside already into turn number 1. They emerge side by side through the corner into 2, and as they head down towards the braking zone for 3, Rose on the outside. Meanwhile, he's back on the inside now as they come into turn number 3, and you can see here the Pro Pack all staying close together as Tanner Dibble wastes no time on going to the offensive here for DNA Motorsports as he looks up the inside there of Jordan Butler as they emerge from the corner. Meanwhile, in the Pro class, we can see Milan Harris is in the lead of the Pro class ahead of Fernando Takahashi, followed by Braden Melling in at P3 there of the class. They roll their way out of the corner, but meanwhile we look back up to our pros, and it is the case already. John Butler and Ben Rose going toe-to-toe in the run down towards turn number 6, and as they head through the left-hander here, John Butler on the inside, that BMW M4 looking very feisty as they come through the corner. He gets it hooked up, and Jason Landry also trying to go round the outside here on Ben Rose, and Rose is falling like a stone right now if he is the case. All of our drivers feeling very feisty, and well, to be fair to Rose, he's just keeping his cool. But meanwhile in the AM class here, Stefan Chalafu getting a brilliant start to his race, leading right now by 1 second ahead of Lizarazo as they make their way through turn number 7 and up towards 8, but behind Mark Senegal already tries to pounce as he makes his way up to speed through turn number 8 and heading up towards Cops Corner at 9. But as they charge their way on through, must look from them to Ilya Speaker here, battling with Logston, but Speaker's losing out a little bit as they head into turns 10 through to 13. Through Maggots into Beckett's they come, and as they come roaring on through here, you can see that Melling under pressure right now from Logston behind as they head through the right-hander at 12. Now as they emerge, Melling understeers a little bit wide. Will he have enough pace to hold off the Mercedes in the run down the back straight here as they head all the way out towards turn number 15? My gut feeling says that Melling's not going to be safe here as they head on through, and in fact as they head into the braking zone here for 50, it's going to be a battle on the brakes, and Logston up the inside, and look at Speaker here trying to come on through as well, but the Rockefeller Racing driver doesn't have the space and therefore has to back out, or do they, as they head on down. In fact, looking for the cutback here as they snake their way into the braking zone. In fact, it's Melling who goes a little bit deeper on the brakes here for ERS by Skyline Designs, and as they make their way through the last couple of corners, that's 1 lap already in the bag. So after 1 lap, it is John Lauzon who leads ahead of Jordan Butler in P2, followed by Tanner Dibble P3, Jason Landry P4, Ben Rose P5, Luke Burtonshaw P6, those are your pros, followed by Miller Harris P7, leading the Pro-Am class, ahead of Fernando Takahashi, followed by Logston, then it's Melling in P10, followed by Speaker in P11, and Speaker's looking for the move, but look at Wilding coming on the inside here, but it's the case that Speaker covers him off, and the DNA Motorsports driver is made to go backwards towards Carver Robbins, as Carver Robbins here looks to go on the offensive in P13, John Crew P14 on his debut, Jermaine Moore in P15, then meanwhile in the AM class, right now it's Kevin Lizarazo who continues to lead as he's found his way past the likes of Stefan Chalafu. Meanwhile we then have Jose Mari in P17, followed by Joe Nagy P18, Glenn Bratton P19, then Michael Zepp P20, Zepp defending here versus PG Christensen, who's going to go all the way way around the outside. I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, that is not Christensen there in the Porsche. It is the case that Christensen's in the BMW as he makes his way up to speed, and we bring that battle box up on screen here for your clarity and viewing pleasure. And in fact, that is Smith, who is a lap down, given he started from the pit lane. He's classified as a lap down already. Meanwhile, Jose, oh my good lord, I'm not sure what's happened there, but Jose Maury parked up with what is a car, and I believe that is Joe Nagy. The two of them come together in the weirdest of places, which is in the run down the Wellington Straight. I think one of them may have cut across the other and caused the two to come together, but that is a surprise and not a welcome one to be sure. And what's a surprise as well, from leading the AM class, he's dropped all the way down towards the bottom of it. And this is Kevin Lizarazo here, who's got it so horribly wrong at turn 8. In fact, turn number 7 there as he goes through 8 right now, but the 288 driver there really not having a good day. But as he gets himself back up to speed, it is the case. We look back up towards the front of the field, and as they make their way into turn at number 15, Jordan Butler holding on for now, but it does look as though here Landry's looking for another move, but he can't get close enough here to Tanner Dibble as they make their way into the braking zone for turn at number 16. Meanwhile, further back there, your eyes do not deceive you, that's Fernando Takahashi being passed by James Logston coming through 15, and as they make their way through the left-hander at 16 here, Takahashi I think is going to have to wait his turn, given the fact that the move has been made as we're in. John Lauzon is into the pit lane, and we anticipate that is to repair the car, given the fact he's dropped down the order of camera, and it is the case that with the damage he's picked up, I think he does need to take a stop. He can't go all the way to the end. Now, whether he can fuel the car up to go to the end, that's a big question. I think he may be able to, but we'll have to wait and see whether that is the case. But meanwhile, a bit further back here, we see the AMs really kicking it off, and that's Mark Senegal in what is the green-black Ferrari, trying to hold at bay. Stephen Chalafert and Jesse Jamison Jr., and as we ride on board here with Jamison Jr., trying to find his way up the inside of Chalafert through turn number 17 into 18 they come. But of course the challenge here is, as we see that Matthew Smith jumping all the way to the head of the pack on our timing tower. So I think we've got a bit of a glitch on our timing tower. I'm not exactly sure what's happened there with regards to Smith. Hopefully that will settle down at some point and we can get better clarity, but I would have hoped he would have started on the lead lap given he started from the pit lane. But point is, as we focus here on Jameson Jr. on his way up into turn number 3, well, it looks as though the American driver here from middle of the pack racing lead not quite able to get the move done, but you can see there Chalafut takes a peek to the inside, can't quite find it on Senegal as Senegal leaves the door open there, inviting him in, and then saying no, we're close, thank you very much. But he takes a bit of gravel, and as he comes out turn number 5 here through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight they go, and you can see Jameson getting very close here, looking up the inside into turn number 6, onto the brakes they roll, and as they do, I think the American's going to have the move here on Senegal as they roll the way through, and he does, he gets it hooked up nicely, and Mark Senegal then made to lose 2 places through a cool sequence there of turns 5 and 6, but as he makes his way on round right now, I would imagine that Senegal will be coming back later on. But as they head on out here, we have had clarification that Smith started from the pits, but he's not a lap down. That's a glitch in our timing tower. We do apologise for that. And in fact, Matthew Smith already up into the lead of what is there, the AM class. And well, it's the case, whilst our timing tower wanted him to be a lap behind, he says otherwise. He makes his way charging on around here. But meanwhile, a little bit further back, we see the 2 Audis here of Glenn Bratton and also Michael Zepp in the AM class, really battling out as they roll the way through turns 11, 12 and into 13. And to be fair to them, the Audi has not been the car this season so far. In fact, just has not been on the pace of both what was the Hockenheim Ring and also the Red Bull Ring. But these two are really giving it a good go, and that's what we love to see as they make the way on down. But meanwhile, looking from them, we're hearing that Jermaine Warren, oh goodness me, and Braden Melling have both had a major coming together at turn number 16 as they get themselves back up to speed. And we're not exactly sure what's happened there. It's all kicking off all over the place right now at Silverstone, and well, as they've returned to speed, it is the case. They've both had a disruption to their race, but they're able to go racing once again. But meanwhile, Zepp up the inside there, Glenn Bratton into 16, gets it done just about on the brakes, and Blatton tries to follow suit now as they make the way through turn number 18 and onto another lap behind them. Look at this, Stephen Chalafert goes deep, PG Christensen on the inside, but Christensen backs off there, and Jesse Jameson now looking to go around the outside here into turn number 1. This is going to be Bolton Jameson Jr., and he goes all the way around the outside, and that takes commitment. But that's Jameson Jr. showing that he understands the downforce in that Mercedes and can get it done as he moves up into his P5 in the AM class. But as they make the way out, and we say hello to Dills_TV in the Twitch chat there, who says let's go, and indeed let's go charging round Silverstone. It is the case with 33 minutes still on the clock here. We've seen plenty of action so far, and there's more to come. And speaking of action, we'll right at the front of the field as we ride on board the gearbox here of DNA Motorsports is Tanner Dibble, the 69 driver who running his way through turns 10 10-11 right now. That is Jason Landry behind, and Will Dibble needs to take the win as a minimum here to potentially get the Euro Cup. If he doesn't win and Jason Landry finishes ahead, then Landry is guaranteed to take it away from him, given that Landry is the championship leader right now as they head down towards turn number 15. But you can see on the circuit map there in the top right corner of your screen how the AMs have fallen a little bit back over the Primes and also the Pros, but the Primes are really keeping tact with the Pros at this point in time. And I do believe actually the Primes went a little bit early and they didn't quite give that 5-second gap that was expected, but still, we haven't had any major instance for it, so I think there'll just be a slap on the wrist to whoever's responsible for that as our drivers roll the way through here. And you can see that Dibble, both of them in the Porsche, of course, so with equal machinery, it comes down to the driver, and as they roll the way through turn number 18, we know that Jermaine Warren's had to jump to the pit. Chalafou's dropping down the order like a stone, but as they head up towards turn number 1 here, Dibble holding on for now, and Jason Landry really trying to mount that pressure. But of course, what Landry can now do is look at backing it off and doing a bit of lift and coast and fuel saving, switch the engine map as well. That may just help out in the long run. Meanwhile, we can see there, that was Ilya Speaker making their way around the outside of Fernando Takahashi into turn 1, and Takahashi under pressure here from John Kroon, fellow Rockefeller racing driver, goes all in into turn number 3. Now that's coming from a long way back. I can tell you one thing, if he sends letters to relatives, he sends them first class, because he absolutely licked and sent that as he makes his way out of turn number 4, and I don't think Fernando Takahashi even saw it coming as John Kroon now moves up to P4 in the prime class, P9 on circuit. But as they make the way on out here, we've got Jesse Jameson Jr. on the inside of Michael Zepp, and Zepp being caught out then. Jameson Jr. up another place, up into P2 in the AM class. Matthew Smith may be running away with the AM class standings right now. As into the wall there, that is Glenn Bratton getting it horribly wrong, and he's had to jump to the pitch. But meanwhile, we come back to our drivers who are making their way safely up towards turn number 3 right now, not to take away from Bratton, getting it wrong it would seem, coming through turn number 1. I'm not sure if there was contact there, but PG Christensen right now chasing over to Jose Mauri. And remember, of course, that both Mauri and Joe Nagy came together in the run all the way down what was the Wellington straight. We don't know how it happened, but it all happened very quick and very fast. Both of them slightly crumpled cars here, and I think the aero's a bit wrinkled, but it is the case they're both pushing on. PG Christensen behind as they make their way up into turn number 6 once again here. It is the case that we do see Matthew Smith. Well, I don't think he's quite had his fill of making moves, although behind him he's got John Lauzon who's trying to get past him, and Lauzon of course having to make his way to the pits to do repair work to that BMW M4. The Pro Class driver will try and come through very soon. In terms of those, they make the way up through Meggetts and Beggetts here, turns 10 through to 13. I think Smith might be looking at letting Lauzon go down the back straight on the hangar straight. We'll have to wait and see as the clock strikes the first 10 minutes here. We've still got 30 minutes to go and still plenty to come, including those mandatory pit stops. But meanwhile, as we look back to our leaders here, Jason Landry staying very close to with the leader of Tanner Dibble as we ride on board here, going on to lap number 6. And as they roll their way through turn number 1 into 2 here, we're in that Stefan Chalafou's had a bit of a moment, as meanwhile Lauzon has got past Smith off camera in that battle for P13 overall. No change in class position, but here you can see Landry trying to set Dibble up, trying to get him to go overly deep into these corners. They come through turn number 4, a little bit of wheel spin there for Dibble as they come through turn 5, and as they exit Aintree and onto the Wellington straight. I think Jason Landry's done it here, and it's going to be a drag race of the Porsches. They make the way out towards turn number 6. Now what can Dibble do? Well, he's got to try and throw it all the way around the outside to come back on the inside into turn number 7, but with a bit of dust across the circuit there, I think Dibble just catching a little bit of a drift, and Jason Landry is through into the lead of the race with now 29 minutes still on the clock. And the question is, can Dibble or Butler or Burtonshaw find their way back afterwards? We see the Vector by RSR driver here having a bit of a relatively slow start to this race, but then again, could he have an ace up his sleeve? Could he be doing a bit of extra fuel saving compared to everyone else, so he doesn't have to put as much fuel in when he comes in for that pit stop? But as he makes his way down, we say hello there to the real Tragic Johnson in the Twitch chat, who says that everything's on fire right now. Indeed, this racing is on fire, and speaking of things on fire, it's the case that he's lit the tyres up there, and they're going to feel a little bit on fire. That's Mark Senegal going for a spin, coming out of turn number 4, and the 227 driver returns, but that's not the way he's wanted it to go after what was a good start from the privateer, and now it's going a little bit from good to bad to worse, but he's still got time to make it all up. Meanwhile, we can see there Michael Zepp in that Audi R8 LMS right now, that whilst it may be an older car in this field, dating all the way back to 2015-2016, it is the case it's duking it out with the 2022 BMW M4, but as Zepp goes a little bit deep there, coming out to turn number 7, he's not going to let that withstand his ability or his ambitions to make his way up the field and potentially claim this third place in the AM class, but he's got Lizarazo and Joe Nagy behind here as they make the way into Copse Corner at turn number 9, and as they roll the way on through, I wouldn't be surprised if Nagy's thinking about a potential move, but he goes a little bit wide. He's got to be careful, of course. The more he runs wide on the exit of Copse Corner, the more likely he's to pick up an instant. If he goes too wide, he'll be required to give a slow down there and give the time back, given the fact there's so much of a runoff area. As we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Lerb, who quotes the infamous line from the recent Silverstone Grand Prix 2022, through goes Hamilton. Well, unfortunately, none of our drivers are named as Hamilton, so we can't re-quote that here today, but you never know what could happen here as Joe Nagy is getting closer and closer to the back of both Lizarazo and Zep. Zep's going to be under pressure from Lizarazo as they make the way up towards turn number 15 and onto the brakes. The BMW driver goes, and with him comes Joe Nagy as they roll the way through. Michael Zep goes deep, but meanwhile Lizarazo now goes deep in return, coming out of 15, and Joe Nagy going to try and go all the way around the outside on the brakes, and this is going to be very bold to do this, and he makes it work. Meanwhile, Michael Zep here gets on the inside of turn number 17, but he's now very tight to the apex of 18 as they come through the corner, and as they roll the way through, look at this, behind us it's the case. Jose Mauri comes charging on through and goes to the inside, but it's a slowdown for track limits for Mauri. That's very unfortunate. I think he felt as though he had it all said and done, but it didn't count in the end, and as he makes his way back up to speed, Zep and Mauri both lose out. Meanwhile, Lizarazo gains the place and Joe Nagy gains 2 for the price of 1. As they make the way through what is turns 3 and 4 right now. We can see in the AM class a lot of battling occurring, but it's not just in the AM class as well. As meanwhile, we do look back up to our prime leader here of what is Milan Harris, and he has behind him, you guessed it, that's James Logsdon right now, the Mercedes driver, indeed the leader of the Prime Championship, looking to put the pressure on as they make the way down what is the hanger straight and up towards turn number 15. But as they do here, Logsdon getting close, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to look for the move. As we can see, Harris by comparison caught up behind Ben Rose, the pro driver there, as they roll the way on through. But as they head through turn number 15 and down towards 16 now, I do think that it might be the case that Logsdon playing a bit more of a tactical game here and keeping an ace up his sleeve for later on, we might be able to get the jump in the pits. But as they come through the corners here, it is the case that Logsdon gets in very close as Jason Landry sets the fastest lap of the race for 59.486. As they come out to the corner here, Logsdon moving on. Can he potentially get the move as we ride on board here with the Team Bear Boat driver? Heading into turn number 1 here, you see he gets a much tighter apex, not affected as much by the dirty air compared to Harris, who lets the car understeer a little bit wide, and Logsdon's thinking about it here. You can see that Harris right now a bit left, right and centre, doesn't know where to put the car, and as Logsdon comes out the corner here, he's going to try and go all the way around the outside. He's going to need to find the grip, and so he does, as they make the way out turn 4 and through 5 as they head for Aintree Corner here. Look at Harris keeping his nose in the mix, but he hasn't got the speed to contest the run to turn number 6, and Logsdon is through into the lead of the race in the prime class here, P6 overall as they head down to turn number 6. Now, will it be enough here, or will we see a potential comeback move from Harris as they head into 7? Well, I think Harris is a bit too far away to go through here with 15 minutes on the clock complete, still 25 to go. But as they make the way out to turn number 7, James Logsdon is your new prime leader, and I think he's now going to try and break away. Meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, after it was the case that we saw that Dibble was passed by Landry, we now see that Butler running in P3 in the pro class is under pressure from Luke Burtonshaw, and now we're starting to see Burtonshaw unveil the pace and release the beast that is contained within that flat 6 engine of the Porsche 911 as he makes his way through turns 12 and 13 in quick succession here. But I think that the Vector by RSR driver, if he's saving it all up to late, he's saving it very late indeed, because being cold behind Butler right now is not where he wants to be. He needs to be further up there, given the fact that right now he is 4 seconds off of Jason Landry, and he needs to take that win off of him if he's going to be able to have a chance to win the Euro Cup, or really keep himself nice and close before Landry's able to open up an advantage in the overall Drivers' Championship. But as they make the way out to turn at number 15 and down towards 16, Burtonshaw getting closer, but backs off there in the run to 16. Deciding things to just lift and coast under braking and heads through 17 here. Behind you can see Ben Rose in P5 right now, part of that lead pack of the pro drives here, but he's got the pressure of Logsdon and Harris behind him as they head on through, and Jason Landry sets another fastest lap, a 59.438. I think it is the case that Jason Landry really trying to put a bit of distance and daylight between himself and Dibble and the rest of the pro pack. But as they head on around here, it is the case we look from them to Lizarazo, meanwhile, who is gradually catching up to the back there of Joe Nagy in the battle for P16. That's P3 in the AM class as they make it through, but he's not going to be catching up. He makes errors like that. The car drifts wide on him. Jose Mauri comes on through there, just simply carrying a bit too much speed through 12. As he he got himself up to speed? It was the case that he just could not catch the rear end in time, and Michael Sepp also comes on through here. So we've still got a bit of interchange between our AM drives and the battle for being inside that top 5 as they make their way towards the end of their current lap. They're on lap number 8, heading on to lap number 9. The leader's already on lap number 9, and Matthew Smith right now in particular, the leader of the AM class, who of course starting from the pit lane, has picked his way through the order quite rapidly as he makes his way through turns 3 and 4, and as he exits on out here, the DNA Motorsports driver signing for DNA Motorsports as of prior to this round. It was the case listed as privateer beforehand, but now an official member of the DNA Motorsports team. He's definitely got definitely got racing in his DNA, I can tell you that, given the fact he's really pushing the mark out right now with regards to the AM class. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a class shake-up after this round, and we could see Matthew Smith being promoted to the Pro-Ams, given the pace he has demonstrated time and time again. But as he makes his way out to turn number 7 here, it is the case. Our drive's rolling away on through, and in particular we look back to that battle for P3 overall, and in the Pro class here, Jordan Butler from DNA Motorsports still under pressure from Burtonshaw, but Burtonshaw not able to get close enough to make the move or push the issue of contention here. And I think what Burtonshaw is doing, he's trying to get Butler to make an error, as Butler does go a little bit deep there, and Burtonshaw gets ever close as they make the way down the brake here, and Burtonshaw's going to try and go outside to inside. Now this is going to be brave here from Burtonshaw if he can hook it up, but you can see there Butler gets the better run through 16 and can just literally point the car into the apex of 17 and cover it off as they made the way around. Landry sets another fastest lap at the front of the field at 59.21. Meanwhile, Tanner Dibble's just lost 2 seconds on the lead on that last lap, setting a 2:01.53. Well, Butler and Burtonshaw both running in the 2 minutes 0.60s, and I do wonder where it's the case with their baton, and they're actually squandering a chance of chasing after Dibble right now. But to be fair, Butler's going to want to try and hold on to that P3 and not let the driver behind get past him and up towards his teammate, because they will want to make it a double podium for DNA Motorsports in the Pro class and overall as they make their way out to turn number 5. But as they head their way down the straight, head down the Wellington straight, you see Butler not defending right now, and could this be to his detriment as Burtonshaw looks close? Not close enough. Meanwhile, in the battle for what is the Pro-Am lead here, you can see that after being passed by Logston, Milan Harris is not giving up as they make the way through turn 6 and into 7 here. They're still very close together, and well, we were talking about that after Logston got past. If Milan Harris just simply let it go, I think it was the case that after being passed around the outside, as they passed their way over the camera there in the curb, and as they rolled away through turn number 8 here, Milan Harris definitely showing some nuance to stay with the championship leader and indeed the cup leader as they head into turn number 9 right now. And as they roll away through Cobb's corner here, I wouldn't be surprised if Harris looks to try and get the jump back just before they come into the pit, or when they emerge from the pit lane, he might try and be ahead. But as they head into the braking zone here for turns 10, 11 and 12, it is the case Magnitude's back once again here, and Ben Rose at the head of this show, the Pro driver here, will be happy that he's got the racing on, but what I don't think he'll be happy about is that he's got 2 Proms behind him who are absolutely nibbling at his rear to try and take that overall position of P5 as they head on down. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see that that's Lizarazo off circuit again. Well, Lizarazo really having a difficult day here at the Silverstone circuit, getting it wrong at turn number 4 by looks of things, and Jose Mari coming on through. Meanwhile, as we're hearing that Jordan Butler's into the pit, so Butler has come on in, and so does Ben Rose, and meanwhile, it looks so coming up the inside, there's Milan Harris on Logston at turn number 16. Oh, there's contact between the two of them, and it's the case that Harris's turn as Logston goes on a run. Oh my goodness, and what's the worst thing you could want as Milan Harris just sends teammate John Kroom to the wall, and well, it's one thing to connect with another driver, it's another thing when it's your teammate in the same class, and I don't think they're going to be too happy about that one, but it's happened, and now they've got to let the dust lie with it, as meanwhile we've got Rose, Butler and Alex Carver-Robbins into the pit as they continue to press around. Now I think there was a little bit of netcode contact in that contact between Logston and Harris as well. We did see a bit of a gap between the 2 cars, but the contact was made, and everything else afterwards was the domino effect, as meanwhile coming out of the pit, so that's Ben Rose. He had a quick stop, a very short stop in fact, and now makes his way up towards turn number 3. But to be fair to him, he's got to make his way around Kroom nice and early here, and he does so. Kroom in a wounded car and trying to get it on around before making that pit stop, and I think it was the case that John Kroom is expecting to come in at the end of the next lap by default based on his strategy, but it's not the way he's wanted it to go, and he's going to be losing a lot of time here as time presses on. But meanwhile, one driver I can tell you who's not losing a lot of time, and a bit of an unsung hero perhaps in this class right now, Jesse Jemison Jr. running in P2 in the M class, P14 overall, not quite on the pace of Matthew Smith, but outpacing the rest of the AM class by a sizable margin here, and Jemison right now a comfortable 14 seconds clear of what is Nagy behind as they roll the way on around here on lap number 11. But as he heads his way on through with the fact that Burtonshaw has been released, and here is Luke Burtonshaw We are waiting to see whether he peels into the pits at the end of this lap and tries to get the jump back on Butler. Of course, the two of them battling, Burtonshaw and Butler, on the previous lap. But as they make the way on around here, it is the case. We do see there little Matt saying, oh no, and that would be awkward in the pits of Rockefeller Racing. Indeed, I can imagine there might be a couple of words there. But to be fair, from what I understand, it's a very positive atmosphere down in the RR garage. So as a result, I think it might be the case they just dissect it and understand what exactly happened and then move on from it. But meanwhile, as we look a bit further back here, Lizarazo versus Senegal. Senegal trying to make the move into turn number 6 as they head down to the end of that Wellington straight. And on the inside, he's gone and onto the brakes. And Mark Senegal moves back up to P6 in class, or the AM class that is P19 overall. Gets the move done on Lizarazo. But to be fair, with both drivers having had nasty moments of their own, I can imagine that both of them right now do not want to push the boat out and instead just want to keep it straightforward and simple in terms of making those moves and trying to get it to the end of the race. They both not come into the pits yet. They've both still got to take their mandatory pit stop, and we'll have to wait to see what happens as they make their way closer and closer to the pit time. As we know, John Kroom is into the pits. He's made it to the pit lane with that damaged Rockefeller Racing Mercedes, and well, you can imagine, I think as per our prediction, he was due to come in, and that's why he decided not to park it up and let it tow, for the simple reason he'd lose out. Now, we have had confirmation in terms of drivers who are out. We do have 3 retirements in the form of Stefan Chalafu, Brandon Mellin, and also Roger Ganesh. So we've lost 3 of our 26 starters, still 23 in this race, and still plenty more to come. And speaking of plenty to come here, a little bit of a back and forth between Jermaine Warren and Glenn Bratton. Bratton got ahead only moments ago, only for Jermaine Warren to come in front. I think Bratton there briefly serving a slow down penalty, if I don't slur my words. And as he comes through turn number 12 and up towards 13, right now the privateer, I think, just trying to point the car straight and get it to the end of the race. As to be fair, running down in P9 in class, P23 overall. And I think focusing more on what he can do as time wears on. But as we see him making his way up towards turn number 15 with the V10 engine Audi, it is the case we look a little bit further up the field, and in particular to John Wilding here, who right now running in P8 for DNA Motorsports. Here's the case, he's got his teammate Ben Rose in the Pro class behind him. Of course, Wilding being a prime driver here, and as they roll the way through Cops Corner, he goes very wide, and the car snaps loose on him, but he just about manages to catch it as he heads across the ground. That's going to be a lot of dust and pick up on the tyres as he stays on the grass there to let what John allows on through before rejoining. But that could have gone far, far worse for John Wilding, but carrying a bit too much speed. Meanwhile, it is the case as Jason Landry is into the pit lane from the lead of the race, and Tanner Dibble and Luke Burtonshaw stay out, as we're to understand it. It is the case that Jose Mari here looking for the move versus Michael Zepp as they roll the way through turn 6 and into 7. And as we ride on board here with Mari on board the dashboard, well, Zepp goes a little bit deep. Now as they emerge from the corner, you can imagine Zepp's going to be on the left. He's not quite visible on the camera right now. And in fact, as we try to sit a little bit further back in the car, will we see him? No, we will not. But he's there on the outside. And in fact, as we look to the exterior camera, Zepp gets the drag race done and back ahead as they roll the way through Cops Corner here. But the QZ Motorsport driver looking to try and get the move done. And to be fair, I think that damage on that Ferrari is holding him back a little bit. I don't think he's got the straight line speed he wants in the car. He's got it in the corners, but he just doesn't have the speed to seal the deal. And Michael Zepp, to be fair, putting on a very strong showing for QZ Motorsports as he rolls his way through turns 12 and 13. It is the case the Audi R8 driver really trying to dig deep here and get himself a top 5 in class. But as they make the way down the straight, you can see both of them right now running nose to tail. And it's the case that Mauri trying to stay in the slipstream as they make the way out towards turn number 15. I think that is where we're seeing that straight line speed hampered by the damage on the Ferrari as they roll the way through. But as they head their way down and around right now, we've still got pit stops to come. We've still got 15 minutes on the clock. We've got Jameson Jr. and Nagy both in the pits. We've still got more to come, including, I do believe, these two, plus Mark Senegal and PG Christensen behind. Meanwhile, it is the case that John Kroom up the inside of PG Christensen for P19 overall. No change in class position, of course, both of them in separate classes. Kroom in the Prime class and Christensen in the AM class, and the AM driver is into the pits as he brings it on through very gradually here and brings it to the limiter line. But meanwhile, Zepp versus Mauri. It's Mauri on the outside on the left of your pitch, and now on the inside, Zepp on the outside into turn number 3. And these two are loving the battle between one another, but they're costing one another plenty of time. But to be fair, when the race is this close, I don't think we mind it. But as they make their way out to turn number 4, a bit of oversteer for Zepp, a bit of understeer for Mauri. Very different fortunes, both of them mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars. But I think there's Zepp is getting a little bit slow coming out of turn number 5, and as they head down the straight, down the Wellington straight here, Mauri gets ahead. Both of them, of course, teammates, both representing QZ Motorsports here. But it is a Drivers' Championship only, so you can imagine the gloves are off. They are really loving this battling against one another. Indeed, battling with a friend is one of the greatest things you can enjoy out on the real world, alternatively in the sim world of motor racing circuit. And as they make the way out right now, Mauri does get ahead after a multitude of corners. meanwhile, we look a little bit further back, and Mark Senegal right now trying to find his way past what is there. Joe Nagy just in front, only 4 tenths between the two of them as we're hearing the Ilya speaker, and also what is there, Harris. Milan Harris are both into the pit lane from what is P2, P3 in the Prime class respectively, and we'll have to wait and see how that shuffles up the Prime class. And Speaker, in fact, making the way out of the pits first and foremost here. And as they come through, where is Carver Robbins? Well, Carver Robbins are a long way away, so no gain there. Elliott Speaker right now up into P2 in the Prime class, and behind, well, that is Milan Harris right now with PG Christensen, who's a lap down, and I think Harris will be feeling fine here behind his teammate with Speaker as they make the way on around. Matthew Smith, meanwhile, emerges from the pit lane. The AM leader, who's been leading by a sizable margin, and that's his pit stop done, cleared and whatnot, and it is against the 276 driver now on course to take the win here today, and indeed the Euro Cup, assuming there's not any late drama, albeit we're not going to try and put the commentator's curse on him. But meanwhile, we look to Ben Rose here, and look at a familiar face. That is John Lauzon from Blue Flag Motorsports, the Canadian driver. After a disastrous start, is the case. He's served one pit stop already. We're not sure if he's got a second stop to do, but regardless of that, he's chasing after Ben Rose, who has taken this stop, and Will Lauzon is trying to put that pressure on as they make the way in to turn number 9. But as they roll the way through the right-hander here, the long run through it is the case that Lauzon runs a little bit wider, maybe a slowdown in the works, potentially. But now we've got bigger fish to fry here in the fact that whilst they're battling for P6, it is the case that Tanner Dibble making his way into the pit lane. Luke Burtonshaw stays on out, as it is the case that Dibble comes on through to take that mandatory pit stop, and Burtonshaw, the longest of everybody to go so far, with Logston behind as well. We do believe that James Logston has stayed out for another lap, so there's still life in the fuel tank there. Regardless of the car, whether it's a Porsche or a Mercedes, it can still go a bit longer, and I wonder whether Burtonshaw has been doing a huge amount of fuel saving all the way through this race, as meanwhile Jason Landry is coming through. Tanner Dibble has left his pit box, he's making his way out, and that is Landry who just charged for our picture there. So Jason Landry has jumped back ahead of Tanner Dibble. He was ahead of Dibble when he came into the pits by a margin of what was 3 seconds, and he re-emerges 3 seconds clear of Tanner Dibble, so no change there. And we do believe that Landry will jump back ahead of Burtonshaw when all is said and done. But to be fair, if Burtonshaw has been doing a plethora of fuel saving, he could be a lot closer, and perhaps he could be in the fight with Dibble for being P2 in the Pro class when all is said and done. So we've got that to wait and watch out for as they make the way on around here. We are getting closer and closer towards the end now. Only 11 minutes left on the clock plus the final lap of the race, but indeed still plenty of racing to come. And meanwhile, speaking of plenty of racing to come here, it is the case that we still do have the big question of who out of the QZ Motorsport drivers is going to be the best of the rest in the AM class outside of Matthew Smith, who's going to take the win as we understand it, and that is Mary versus Zepp here. But they've got to be careful because behind them is Joe Nagy, and Zepp has got back ahead of Mary for a brief period of time. But as they roll the way through turn number 15, they head on down. Will either of them peel into the pits? They both coming in, and Joe Nagy comes on through. Nagy's actually served his pit stop already, so it's the case he will be the best of the rest in that P2 position in the AM class as he comes through turn 16 and 17, and then we'll have to wait to see where Zepp and Mary come on out versus the rest of the field. But Joe Nagy right now has got a clear track in front of him, and I don't think he wants to worry about anything else other than getting the car to the end of the race, much like teammate John Kroon behind. And then we do have Jesse Jameson Jr. here making his way through turn 16 and 17, and will he be able to emerge ahead of Mary and Zepp, as meanwhile Burtonshaw is into the pit. It is the case that Luke Burtonshaw has come in from the overall lead, having led a lap of the race, and now he's being serviced, and we'll have to wait and see as James Logston's also into the pit. Jameson Jr. comes on through, but as he makes his way on around, where's Zepp, where's Mary? They're making the way out of the pit lane, but it's the case that Jesse Jameson Jr. re-emerges P3 in the AM class, P16 overall. And meanwhile, what about Burtonshaw versus Landry? Well, here is Burtonshaw parked up. Meanwhile, Jason Landry coming on through, and as he rolls his way through the right-hander, well, Landry jumps ahead of Burtonshaw, and Dibble comes on through with him as well. So Burtonshaw, has he made the jump on Jordan Butler? Where is Butler is the question. Here comes Jordan Butler, and as they make the way out to turn 1 and up towards 2, Burtonshaw has jumped ahead of the DNA Motorsports driver by the smallest of margins. Look at that, by going what was 5 laps longer and saving a bit of fuel. Burtonshaw has jumped ahead by only 3 attempts when it's all said and done, but those 3 attempts of the Delta, and the Vector by RSR driver has jumped nicely up into P3 overall and in the Pro class. And Jordan Butler right now must be thinking, how on earth did he do that? Well, there's going to be a lot of discussion and debrief after that when I'm showing the DNA Motorsport garage how the jumps have been made, but Burtonshaw's made it happen. And now as they make the way through, I have to cut off my own thought there because we've got Joe Nagy off, and I believe that is at turn 12 at what is Beckett's corner there. And as he brings himself back up to speed, well, the good news for him is that Jesse Jefferson Jr. is a long way back, so not close enough to get involved in the mix there for P2 in the M class pass right now, but could it be a sign of things to come? If there's another mistake, Jemison Jr. could capitalise as they make the way down what is here the hangar straight. Once again, in this case, we have got all of our pit stops now complete. Nobody out of the circuit, not yet having taken a stop, and we'll have to wait to see whether there's any additional stops for our drivers who had those very early pit stops with damage to the car, of course. But right now, the emphasis is on getting it to the end of the race, and Ben Rose here, boy, it may be the case our pro driver has not been up there compared to the top 4 in the pro class, but I don't think he'll mind the fact he's been battling hard with our pro-ams. And in particular there, we do have what is James Logsdon behind, as Logsdon is trying to get closer and closer and rolling his way up down the hangar straight here. But just in front of course, we do have a little bit of a battle between what is Warren and Lizarazo, albeit it's the fact that the two of them are on separate laps, so therefore they're not effectively battling, they're essentially staying behind one another with a blue flag situation. But the point here is that Ben Rose right now with Logsdon all over the back of him will want to take home an overall P5. He will not want to lose out versus the Pro-Am leader, because there is a little bit of pride on the line, of course, as they make the way into turn number 16. Meanwhile, that pride on the line, much more critical here for Mark Senegal versus teammate, well in fact not teammate, my apologies, there is the case. We saw Zep and what was it, Jose Mauri together earlier, but it's the case they've come out separately, and Mauri taking much longer in the pits to repair the car, but Zep gets it wrong, coming out 4 and 5, and Mark Senegal jumps up into P4 in the AM class, P17 overall, and right now he's on a charge here in Senegal, and can he potentially hunt down Jesse Jefferson Jr.? Well, the gap is 10.5 seconds to the end of the race now. It's 7 minutes left on the clock. I don't think Senegal's got enough time to make this count, but what he has got enough time to make count is break away from Zep and still that P4, and that'll be a good haul of points come the end of round number 3. There's no doubt about that. Mark Senegal has been up and down the field today, and he's now on the up once again, and can he stay on the up come the checker flag? Only time will tell. But meanwhile, we look over from our P17 driver to our P10 overall driver of Alex Carver-Robbins here as he makes his way through turn number 4, and as he comes out the corner, runs a little bit deep, and he has got what is Matthew Smith behind him, the AM leader right now, putting the pressure on the Pro-Am debutant, and it is the case that Carver-Robbins, as he charges on down, well, we have to look away for a brief moment. I do believe there's been a mistake from Burtonshaw, and in fact Burtonshaw has lost out versus Jordan Butler, and I believe that is, I'm hearing in my ear right now, it is a slowdown for Burtonshaw. He ran very wide at turn number 9, and as they made the way on through, it was the case he had to take that penalty. Meanwhile, James Logsdon all over the back here of what is Ben Rose as they make the way through 10, 11, 12, and as they come through the Team Bevo driver, it's definitely salivating the prospect of making a move for the overall P5 position. But has he got the speed here in the run down the straight? I don't think he's close enough as he heads underneath the gantry and way out towards turn number 15. Idiot Speaker is a long way back by comparison, 7.5 seconds back, so Logsdon can play with this. He doesn't have to worry about losing at too much time, but indeed Deals _TV in the Twitch chat, battles everywhere, left, right, centre, but that's what we love to see here in the middle of the pack racing the GT3 Championship, much like how we wrapped up the GT4 Championship and also the Touring Car Racing Championship. Battles left, right and centre, and plenty more in this season. And as I try to roll the way on through here, it goes 5 minutes still left on the clock, and still with that 3 more laps, including the final lap. And how will it all come to a close? Could we have any last minute surprises? And of course, James Logsdon here, if he's going to battle with Ben Rose, he's got one thing to keep in mind: he doesn't gain anything by passing Ben Rose other than a little bit of joy. And speaking of not gaining anything, that's Jesse Jameson Jr., who won't be gaining anything by looking to have a spin at turn number 16. Now, where is Michael Zepp in all this? Well, Zepp's a long way back as he briefly disappears off our camera. So Jameson Jr. there with a spin at the 16th corner. Well, that's not turn 16, my apologies. That's at turn number 6. And as he brings himself back up to speed with a gap to Zepp was 22 seconds, now it's been halved and slashed even further to 9.5 as he brings himself around through turn number 8 and up towards 9. As he heads down towards turn number 9, here it is the case that Jesse Jameson Jr., could we see it all falling apart right at the end here for the 213 driver as he runs a little bit deep there through Cops Corner. I don't think he's going to take a slowdown this time around, but as he makes his way all the way on through here, we do look to Alex Carver-Robbins, meanwhile, who is in the Mercedes there, in the Vodafone Mercedes, battling with what is Matthew Smith as they make the way into the left-hander here at turn number 6, and as they come on through, Will Smith trying to do the dishes in terms of bringing up that top 10 position for the AM class. Indeed, it is the case your AM leader right now really putting the pressure on, but I don't think he's going to be able to get it done here. Not right now. That Mercedes looks very strong on quarter exit as they cut as much as they dare at turn number 8. without picking up a potential penalty. And as they roll the way on out here, it is the case we're hearing that Michael Zepp's had an incident and he has let Kevin Lizarazo through to P5 in the M class, and that's an exchange of P18 overall off screen. But as they make the way through here, it is the case we ride on board with Matthew Smith as we just get to see how intensely he's having to work the car in the run through at what is turns 12 and 13. And as he emerges on the corner here, it is, you can see the bouncing of the suspension there, where it's running over those curves. We're hearing that Ben Rose standing off track, and Logston and Speaker have got them through as a result of that. So Logston and Speaker up to P5, P6 respectively, Ben Rose down to P7 overall, that is. But as we ride on board here with Matthew Smith, you see as he rolls away into the corner here, the Porsche will have the handling advantage. Gets a nice early apex there compared to Carver Robbins, but Robbins just has the pure muscle of that 6.3 litre V8 Mercedes engine, which is able to outpace the flat 6 engine of what is the Porsche as they roll the way through 16, 17 and heading into the final corner here. And as they roll the way on through, they've got a 4-second gap to John Wilding behind the Pro-Am driver, who would like to get into this battle versus Carver Robbins in particular, as they make the way up towards turn 1. And as they roll the way on through right now, this is one of our closest, not the closest battle of the circuit. We're going to stay with it for a little bit longer as they make the way towards turn number 3. And you're right there, Miss Kitty Louise 90. Silverstone never fails to bring the action, that being in the Twitch chat. As meanwhile Smith here is looking closer. You see Carver Roberts goes a little bit deep into turn number 3, and as they exit out the corner and up towards turn number 5 they come now. Again, he'll stay where he is, but he's putting the pressure on his Smith versus Carver Roberts. You see Roberts as a result weaving here down the Hangar straight, in fact down the Wellington straight I should say, get my straights mixed up, and he's trying to break the toe there and make sure that Porsche is not able to benefit from the draft, because that's what the Porsche needs. It's not got the straight line speed of its peers, but what it does have is a brilliant amount of acceleration and fantastic cornering capabilities, and that is good enough to be right in the fight versus its GT3 counterparts as he makes his way through turn number 8. But as they come on through here, we look from them to race leader Jason Landry, who as he makes his way through turns at 16 and 17, he's coming up to the final corner, and with that the white flag will be waving. He'll be heading on to the final lap now as he comes on past Barney Flagg, our flag master, and now one more lap separates Jason Landry from winning at Silverstone, but more importantly taking the Euro Cup in the Pro class here as he makes his way through turns 1, 2 and 3 very quickly indeed. But we look from him to Michael Zepp, meanwhile, who's making the move here versus Lizarazo. Lizarazo on the right, Zepp on the inside. This is for P5 in the M class. These two have literally exchanged this place more times than I can count on fingers as they make the way down towards turn number 16. Such has been the nature of the racing between them. Fantastic racing as the QZ Motorsport driver gets ahead. Oh my good lord, and that was Ben Rose there taking a huge amount of sausage curve at turn number 17 and sending that Porsche into the stratosphere almost. But he's been able to bring it back down to terra firma, I can tell you that. It's the case. He won't be doing that again, because that is going to massively hurt the suspension, and I wouldn't be surprised there if he's got to be careful with the steering rack now, as meanwhile Michael Zepp has passed Lizarazo and is trying to hold on now for that P18, but more importantly a top 5 finish, P5 in the M class on this final lap as they head through turns 3 and 4. Here you can see that Lizarazo tried to stay with his Audi rival as Zepp there locks up into turn number 4 and has to park the car on apex, as in fact the car looks a little bit destabilised, dare I say, and as they make the way on out here and now down where's the Wellington straight, not long to go. They've only got the other half of the lap remaining, but it's the most challenging half. But meanwhile we look from them to Jordan Butler, who after finding his way past Luke Burtonshaw getting a slowdown at the corner they've just passed, you can see that Butler has got all the pressure on him now as they make the way through Maggots into Beckett's here. This is the battle for P3 overall, and in the Pro class they head into turn number 12, and as they roll the way from the right into left here, it is the case heading down the straight very shortly, but I think Butler may have just done enough here. You can see that Burtonshaw's close but not close enough, but we have to cut away from them, because meanwhile here comes your race leader, only 3 more quarters to go, and whilst he has started at the back of his class, it is the case he's made his way on through, and as he comes through the final corner, Jason Landry will take the win in the Pro class and the Pro Euro Cup champion for what is 2022 in the GT3 Championship there. Tanner Dibble P2, and then Jordan Butler all the way to the end with Burtonshaw right hot on his heels will take P3 overall in the Pro class there. The final step of both of those podiums, Burtonshaw P4, he made it work on the strategy, but a slowdown cost him in the end. But meanwhile, here comes your prime leader, for as he makes his way through the final corner, it's James Logston, who takes the win at Silverstone in the Pro class, P5 overall, and that is the Euro Cup winners, we're to understand it, ahead of Ilya Speaker and And well, credit to Speaker, a fantastic drive from start to finish of the Rockefeller Racing driver. A deserved P2 in the Prime class. A flash of lights there, enjoy, ahead of Ben Rose, who'll come on home in P7. And then it will be Milan Harris who completes the Prime podium there. It's a Rockefeller Racing 2-3. John Lauzon in P9 there. Alex Carver-Robbins P10 very shortly. As he makes his way on through the corner, it'll be the case behind him. Here comes Matthew Smith, your AM winner here today at Silverstone, and also your AM Euro Cup champion, as he crosses the line ahead of John Wilding. Fernando Takahashi P13 very shortly coming to the line while our last drivers on the lead lap of the race. And I can tell you as well, it is the case that Jesse Jameson Jr. has already come across the line and will be classified as P3 in the AM class in P16, but Fernando Takahashi comes through P13 here, and then it will be the case we have John Kroon very shortly, the debutant today for Rockefeller Racing in the Prime class. Will have a bit of contact with his teammate at this corner, and they'll debrief about it afterwards, I'm sure. As he comes up through, he'll take P14, that's P7 in the Prime class, and then it will be the case a little bit after we have Joe Nagy, the last driver to finish his race here. And well, the Rockefeller Racing driver, it has been up and down, but to be fair, in the AM class, he has been the best of the rest outside of Matthew Smith, who's been on a class of his own. And Joe Nagy will come on through the final corner here in the 207 machine to take P15 overall, but more importantly for him, second place in the AM class. Congratulations to all of our drivers. Fantastic racing up and down the field. But we must now take a look at our race results. So it is the case then that after what was an absolutely fantastic 40 minutes of racing here in our first feature race round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022, round number 3 at Silverstone as hosted on iRacing, Jason Landry taking the overall win there by 3.4 seconds ahead of Tanner Dibble, with Jordan Butler completing the overall podium. Luke Burton-Short in P4 there, it was the case, just missing out versus Butler after a back and forth between the two of them, and will be kicking himself for that one error that cost him that P3. James Logston in P5, a great drive from Logston to take an overall top 5 ahead of Ilya Speaker, and credit to Ilya Speaker, whilst going under the radar for the majority of the race. It is the case the Rockefeller Racing driver really keeping ahead of the rest of the Prime pack. Ben Rose in P7, Milan Harris P8, John Lauzon P9, and then Matthew Smith. Again, a fantastic start to finish drive for Matthew Smith from the pit lane, no less, taking P10 overall, and John Wilding being the best of the rest there in P11. But as we do look to then the individual class standings, it is the case we start with our pro class, and Jason Landry there confirmed your winner over Tanner Dibble and Jordan Butler. And to be fair, Landry versus Dibble, we saw for a good portion of the race, Dibble was made to work as hard as possible to keep Landry at bay, but Landry just was able to step it up a gear, and after the pit stops, it was the case he re-emerged ahead of Dibble, where he'd left off when he came into the pits, and Dibble just did not have an answer. But still, Dibble making himself a major contender as we go deeper and deeper into the season. Jordan Butler P3 ahead of Burton-Shaw, and you can imagine that Burton-Shaw will recover going into the next round ahead of Ben Rose and John Lauzon. And as we look from our pros to our Pro-Am class here, it is the case we see James Logston taking that win by 11 seconds in the Pro-Am class over Ilya Speaker, with Milan Harris completing the Pro-Am podium. A great drive for a Speaker and Harris for Rockefeller Racing, but just not quite on the pace of Logston today for Team Bear Pope. John Wilding in P4 for DNA Motorsports, a good finish to his day, with Fernando Takahashi completed the top 5 there. The privateer from Brazil getting a good result on the board, and then Alex Carver-Robbins, a great performance in his debut, P6 ahead of John Kroom, Jermaine Warren, Brandon Mailing, and what is Roger Ganesh completing the 10 drivers in the Pro-Am class of attendance today. Unfortunately, retirements there for both Brandon Mailing and also Roger Ganesh. Then we come to our AM class, last but not least, and it is the case that we can see here Matthew Smith taking the win in the end by 57 seconds. Well, that is a statement indeed. I recall back to the day when it was the case that Lewis Hamilton took the win at Silverstone by such a margin and lapped all but 1 or 2 drivers in the field, and you can see that effectively Matthew Smith being one of only 2 drivers in the AM class to finish on the lead lapping class, with Joe Nagy in at P2 there for Rockefeller Racing, representing well, with Jesse Jameson Jr. for middle of the pack, finishing at P3 on the podium there. Great driving from him. It wasn't quite perfect all the way through, but he dug deep and brought home that final step of the podium. Mark Senegal in P4, the privateer, having a few mistakes, but to be fair, battling well for P4, with Michael Zepp from QZ Motorsports P5 ahead of Kevin Lizarazo and Jose Mari. A great freeway battle between the trio for P5. PG Christensen in P8, the privateer, ahead of Glenn Bratton and Stefan Chalafu, completing our 10 drivers in the AM class. Chalafu with that retirement early on into the race, unfortunately. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, those are the individual race results. But I know what you're all probably wondering now. How do the Cup stand after 3 rounds of racing? Well, I'm very pleased to say that as we look to the standings at the end of the Euro Cup, and these standings, as I'm to understand it, are final. They have been decided by our stewards post-race. It is the case in the Pro class. Jason Landry taking the win by 10 points over Luke Burtonshaw there, and then Tanner Dibble only 3 points behind Burtonshaw. And these points also represent the point standings in the overall championships after 3 rounds, and you can see that Landry has pulled an early gap in the championship, but Burtonshaw and Dibble are hot on his tail, but they've got to try and steer clear of battering one another too much so as not to let Landry break away. Jordan Butler in P4 there on 112 points, breaking away from the chasing pack as well in a bit of a no man's land now, ahead of John Lauzon in P5. Ben Rose only 5 points behind, and then we have Shane Larson and Edwin Onofre in P7, P8, and of course we do have Onofre returning, as we're to understand it, at Road Atlanta in round number 4 and looking to come charging back up the ranks. Then we look to the Pro-Am class standings, and it is the case here in the Euro Cup final standings. James Logsdon there confirmed as your Pro-Am champion in the Euro Cup, ahead of Ilya Speaker by 13 points, with Jermaine Warren complete in the top 3. And we can already see how Logsdon is gradually starting to increment ahead of the field, but Speaker really now starting to take the initiative here in that battle for second place, ahead of Jermaine Warren and Fernando Takahashi jumping up into P4. Great driving from him today. Milan Harris in P5, John Wild in P6, Justin Braggant and Spencer Torrance, where it was the case both of them not in attendance today and therefore staying on 73 points, missing out a trick, with Roger Ganesh in P9, Braden Milling in P10, and Alexander Carver-Robbins, John Kroom and Blake Phillips completing the Pro-Am standings. And as we come to the Am class standings in the Euro Cup and also the overall Drivers' Championship, Matthew Smith, as you can see there, on a margin of what is 24 points clear of Michael Zepp, and it's been back and forth for P2, but Michael Zepp now into that P2 position, but by no means comfortable, as he has Jesse Jameson Jr. only 5 points behind. PG Christensen losing out today and dropping down to P4 on 71 points after a difficult day at Silverstone, and Glenn Bratton completes the top 5, only 3 points clear of Joe Nagy. Dan Ocaranza in P7 ahead of Mark Senegal, Jose Mari and Lee Porter, who complete the top 10, and then Kevin Lizarazo, Adrian Fedorowski and Stefan Chalafou complete the rest of the Am class standings. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to announce here are your Cup Championship winners in the Euro Cup, and that is Jason Landry in the number 5 car for the Pro class. In the Pro-Am class, it is the number 142 car of James Logsdon, and in the Am class, it is the 276 car of Matthew Smith. Congratulations to all 3 drivers indeed. They will receive their prizes in due course for taking the Euro Cup win. And now the big question on all 3 of them is, will they be able to make it 2 cups out of 2 when we proceed into the America's Cup after the mid-season break? The pressure will be on all 3 of them, but to be fair, given the pace they've shown, we could also see a bit of a class mix-up. Particularly, I think Matthew Smith may see himself promoted to the Pro-Am class, so if that does happen, we may by default see a new Am Cup champion come the end of rounds 4 to 6. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that means all we've now got left time to do is to say thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy the show today and you want to know more about the middle of the pack racing league community, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you want to get involved in the race, and unfortunately sign-ups are no longer open. They closed at the end of this round because of the fact it'd be unfair to the current participants for drivers to enter after the end of round number 3 due to the championship standings. But it is the case if you're interested in upcoming series and middle of the pack racing league, or you just want to know more and talk to some of the drivers and get to know the admins, then why not check out our official Discord, invite link available on screen. Alternatively, if you're a bit more of a Twitter person, you can always go to twitter.com/MOP Racing and find out all the latest news and information there. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sad to say we do have to take a brief breather because we have to take a mid-week break, a mid-season break. It'll be a week's break, and then we return to the racing. The racing will be kicking off at the America's Cup, in particular the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, and we'll be going to the ultimate roller coaster ride of a circuit that is the American circuit located in the state of Georgia. The racing itself will kick off on Wednesday, the 5th of October 2022, but we'll bring it all to you as if it were live on Saturday, the 8th of October, and you won't want to miss a second. If the Euro Cup has been anything, it has been a demonstration of how fast and furious our drivers are, and they'll all be chomping at the bit to kick off their America's Cup on a high. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, it's goodbye from us at the Middle of the Pack Racing League. It's goodbye from me as your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. And until next time, have a great rest of your weekend. Stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.